brain. Welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk. Come be at peace with me. Ask the Paul, where we rise and don't fall.
Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome to my brain. Welcome to my frequency. Enter at your own risk. Now, today I have a special guest with me. We are going to talk about Black history as we celebrate Black history and American history, right? But I have the head of industry, retail, real estate, and hospitality at Zurich North America. He is a board member, executive board member with the National African Americans and Insurance Association, the Michigan chapter. He's a friend and a mentor of mine as well, Mr. Gerald Chiddick. Gerald, welcome to Baxter's Buzz. How you doing?
Good morning, Baxter. What's happening, man? How you doing?
Man, you know, it's always good to have a chat with you. I'm looking forward to just talking a bit about Black history. And, you know, we were talking a little bit offline as it relates to the importance of this this month and just the importance of just continued education. I had a conversation recently with one of our fellow NAAIA folks, and the question was, you know, do we need Black history? Do we still need the month? Should we still have?
I think we need more than a month, but I definitely think we still need Black history.
So. But do you think that the month is something that should continue, like the celebration of the month?
So yeah, I mean, you make history every day. I mean, you know, the purpose of the month is, you know, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, I think we should appreciate, we don't have to necessarily just be accepting of, but appreciate the fact that we have that opportunity to highlight our history, celebrate our successes, engage others in the conversation around those things. But I don't think that should just be, you know, held to the shortest month of the year within a particular calendar year. And I also think that there are, you know, events and or opportunities throughout the course of the year where, you know, highlighting or reminding or engaging in these discussions around who we are, what we've done, and what we still want to do just need to be continued. So that's why I say it that way. I don't mean that we that we shouldn't just, you know, say, yay, it's, you know, it's March 1st and onward to the next X. I mean, you know, you got to do that every day anyway. So, right. And just because it's, you know, Black History Month, I don't think we should just get mired in our history. I think we should, you know, make sure that we're learning something about, you know, if we don't already know who we are, what we've done, what we've accomplished. You know, it's kind of what we were just, you know, chatting about a little bit. It's funny. It makes me, you know, when you asked me to do this and I started to think about, you know, topics, and the reason why I said, you know, well, if we can stay in this lane, this would be a good lane to stay in, is primarily because, you know, just thinking about my own children in this space. I mean, we've got a number of books and tools around the household that we've used throughout the years to introduce them to, if not remind them of, you know, their history, and primarily because you need those things to help to influence positively and give them positive images. You know, some of the images may not always be, but positive images of who they are, who they could be, right? Yeah. Because there's so much negativity surrounding us and what we hear in our everyday lives, you know, that, you know, if you let that dominate your thought process, you know, I don't know what you choose to do.
That's right. That's right. I did a post on MLK Day, and I've been doing a lot of research just on ancestry.com, just trying to learn more about my own family. But I think very, very similarly, when you talk about Black history, there's a sense of pride that you have when you know what the people have accomplished and the path that they've sort of paved for you, you know, prior to you getting there. And the more that you know, the more empowered I feel personally. And whether they share a last name or a bloodline, but just to know, hey, we are more than maybe the images that we see each day. We've contributed to, as just as much, if not more than any other people, to this great country. It's important to know not just the headliners, but the other folks that have been behind the scenes contributing to this legacy that, and giving us the platform that we have now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there may be stories that were headlines in their day, but that was their potential 10, 15 minutes of fame. And then as a result, it's now a story that if you don't identify or search for it vis-a-vis the internet, thank God at least we have those tools. You're not finding those anymore as widely available, published in books, which is unfortunate, communicated, shared, educated in schools, holistically, which is, a topic for, bigger, broader minds maybe than even our own. And but more importantly, just, as time goes by, if we don't remind ourselves of some of these things, we forget.
That's right.
And if we forget, then we can't blame our children for not knowing.
That's right.
Because then as a result, there was no access to the information to instill in them if we don't share it, or if it wasn't shared with us, to some extent. So having that intellectual curiosity, like, you were just speaking to, and wanting to seek out greater knowledge about these things, I mean, I think that's great. And whether you choose to do it in February or January or September, that's my point about why just, relegating it to a month, I don't think is necessarily the right answer. I think that whenever you're sparked with that curiosity, you should start to, look for the answers that are appropriate, and then be prepared for what you might find. Right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it is history.
That's right. It's all part of the entire picture. I talk about curiosity a lot on the podcast because I feel like it's a simple ingredient of all of the successful people that I know, or have even read about, right? But it's something that we don't embrace, or we don't spend enough time, I don't think, sort of fleshing that out and what that means. Since I've met you, I don't think there's been a encounter where you haven't taught me something, where you haven't shed light on something. And I wonder where your curiosity stemmed from, and sort of why is it so important to you to kind of keep that, that continuing sort of learning, mindset, versus, because you've learned a little bit over the years, but you always seem to be continuing to sort of seek info as well.
I by no means have all the answers, so I'm not sure, who's paying you for that compliment, but that is not me, for those that might be listening to this this event. But I appreciate what you said, and honestly, I just have my family to thank for that. I mean, maybe there was something innate, just in terms of, based on how you're born, with your DNA, all those kinds of things. But exclusive of that, also just being, pushed to succeed and thrive, and want to do better, and want to do more, and want to be a good representative within my own family structure. I'm the oldest of three boys, so I love my brothers, and they're doing great things themselves. But when you're kids and you're the oldest, there's sometimes a little extra added pressure. And we grew up in a time coming, as children of the civil rights movement. We grew up at a time coming out of the 60s into the 70s. I mean, it's just a different, there were just different expectations. Actually, that's wrong. I think the expectations are still the same. I think, like I said, I think the tools we get to use to get there might be slightly different. And so, like I mentioned, books. Like, one of the things that I would get, pretty much, if not from some family member at some point in time along the way of whether it was a birthday, a holiday or something, or have access to, were books. There were books. There were They used to be, Ebony used to put out, a Black Encyclopedia series. I mean, there were books to read that you could learn about a lot of these things. There were all kinds of biographies, autobiographies, not just fiction. I mean, or not, these were nonfiction tomes about our people and our history. So they still exist. They're out there.
Right.
But I don't know how readily we are still affording those tools because of the benefit or the free and ease of the internet. And that's okay. Then let's push the kids to, pick up and learn and engage with us in a conversation about something that they're learning vis-a-vis the internet. And those are the things that I think, versus just play the video games. Those are the things that I think that, at least when I was coming up, we didn't have those tools. You either played outside, but if you were inside, you were doing one of two things. You were either doing homework or maybe you were reading independently. Yeah. That was it. There wasn't much else to do. I guess you could fight with your brothers if you wanted to, but you were just going to get beat later if you did that. So,
Well, I think maybe the access to information is almost so available that we almost take it for granted.
I think it's overwhelming to some extent today, and so that was the other point.
There's so much. Where do you start? Where do you even start to pull from? Because there's so many, places that you can go, and you may not even know what you're looking for. But I guess that's where it comes down to us.
That's right.
Pointing ourselves and pointing our peers and those that are coming, behind us in the right direction.
I mean, it's just like this conversation. It starts with a question, right? So if you pose, if you ask the question, and are seeking the answers, if not, and even if you get the answer from one person, there may be another way. There may be other answers out there. There may be other, other versions to the story. It's so, it's very ironic in many instances, the way in which we, in many instances today, seem to land on and arrive at a conclusion based on, whether it was a hypothesis and one response. So if you think about it somewhat scientifically, right? You may have to test those responses to see if that conclusion is real and if it's right.
Yeah.
And you might find alternate data that tells you something different.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes that I've heard just over the past several years is, you're only as good as the last time you changed your mind. And I think that we'll research the heck out of an opposing opinion, right? And we'll poke holes in that and we'll dissect that, but we don't run our own opinions through those same tests enough to, like you said, it's like if one person said it, one article had it, if one YouTuber said it, then it must be fact. And we're not challenging those thoughts enough and understanding that we can unlearn and relearn with additional context, right?
Yeah, and maybe this is way too, I don't know. We're in the insurance industry, right? So facts, or at least what we think are the facts, they matter, and you got to have information and data to arrive at conclusions. And at some point, you got to make a decision. I mean, that's just the bottom line, right? And that may not just be true in our business. That may just be true in life. You got to make a decision. Sure. So, but in order to make a decision, you should at least have the information, and you should be willing or want to ask the questions. And so if you're because history can be your best teacher. If not for understanding some of the historical events that may have taken place, and have taken place, and reviewed those, you just might wind up repeating it over and over again, just staying in the cycle. And we know how that works. We've seen it play out. It'll probably maybe that's just part of the way things are. I hope not. Change is important. I believe in change. Um, but once again, that's why, really engaging in and providing information that, can be insightful is really important. And so regardless of age, I mean, I only focused on the youth because that's, the next generation, but regardless of age, hopefully that's something that everybody embraces and wants to lean into. And, in this particular month where the focus conversationally is around Black history, it would be awesome if everyone, Black or otherwise, did just that, took the opportunity to learn something about the history of our people, if not only in this country, around the world, and what the contributions have been.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and if they start, if we all just look for one person, one fact, one piece of history that we didn't know prior, that could be powerful, right? But we can't keep recycling these same headlines without really, we're more than headlines, right? The Black people have been some of the most important people in this country, and we can't be relegated to some one-dimensional headline, some generic book report that we did in third grade, right? We there's more layers to it, and we're doing ourselves a disservice if we don't spend that time to investigate and learn a little bit more, and then teach those things to others, right?
Well, but again, the headlines are important. We just can't forget them. That's all I'm saying.
Sure,
they are
sure.
important. And so
Sure.
and so because that is information. It is information that is there to be consumed. More times than not, that those things are inclusive of real people, real stories, real things, right, that are happening. So and to your point about opinions, part of what happens when you read something is you do arrive at a conclusion. That conclusion is yours. That's your opinion, or that's your interpretation.
Right.
And so I think that there is some importance in that. But yeah, I mean, do we know all the stories? No. Will we ever know all the stories? I don't know.
Yeah.
But is it important to make sure that we continue to inspire the desire to look and learn and then further educate and communicate accordingly? Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and I think if as I get older and my children get older, I want to continue to challenge myself to make sure that I am walking the talk, right? And as I'm trying to teach them things, as they're learning things, we have to continue to learn, continue to understand that, yeah, there's headlines that we need a refresher on, but then we also got to read some of those longer sentences underneath that to get that context, because a lot of this stuff has happened and these patterns in the history repeating itself. We just don't realize it because we never maybe learned it to begin with. Gerald, I want to give you just the last word. You, aside from industry, when you think about sort of the evolution of Black History Month and how it's been celebrated over the years, like, what have you seen? What differences have you seen maybe from years ago to this, like this year, 2022?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's a big one. What have I seen? Well, I mean, you definitely see corporations spending more time acknowledging the month, the history of just maybe our people in general, or maybe even just specific leaders. I think that's helpful. They've got a big voice in things, right, in this country that people pay attention to. So I think that's important. I think you definitely, but one of the things that I know that I've seen, maybe to some extent, that's a little disappointing is, not as much information in the schools being taught about a broader spectrum, within the curriculum. that's a challenge that I would like to see us as a country, if not people, try to revert in many instances. So those would be two things that, it's kind of, it's interesting. It's an interesting kind of, tipping of the scales, kind of along those lines that's taken place here over at least since I remember being school age to where we are today. And, it's kind of ebbed and flowed. So we just need to get to be more consistent across the board in highlighting, celebrating, and ensuring that, all generations of whatever background learn something about the contributions made by our folks. Just like we're, I would say required, but it does feel like a requirement, like we're required to learn about others.
For sure. And again, it's all part of this entire portrait and this entire canvas. It would be a shame to say, well, what about this part of this canvas? And then people say, oh, no, don't worry about that. Just worry about this side. It doesn't make sense, right? This country is not perfect, and it's okay, but we must shed light on the good, the bad, and everything that's made this gumbo that we're enjoying these days.
Well, and I'd say one last thing: start with your own history. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like even within our own families, sometimes we don't. Whether you use Ancestry or those things or not, I mean, it's it just if you're still blessed to have your grandparents around, or the generation above or two. I mean, like have the conversations. Ask them about their lives. I mean, learn something about what has transpired or taken place. Hopefully, to the positive. Within your own history. I mean, and I'm looking at the diversity of the books you've got on your shelf behind you, and I've got a wall that you can't see, but it's like point out if those tools are there, point them out and let folks know. I mean, there's no single story. Those don't have the same book title. So
that's right.
So there's everybody's got a story to tell.
That's right.
So
thank you for your time. I know
yeah.
This was good, and I know we could go another 60 minutes easy because it is nuanced, and it's not something you just put in a nice little bow. But I think we did a good job just kind of furthering the conversation and hopefully encouraging some folks to do their own research and educate themselves.
Yeah,
right?
Because whatever you might be interested in around the topic, I think it's important for folks to understand and know that we have played a role in every category of life in this country, if not in history, in human history. So whatever your interest might be, use that as an opportunity to then, do a little digging and learn a little something about, what does that backstory look like?
Yeah. Oh,
and then do something about what you want to do in that space today that makes you a history maker tomorrow.
I love that. Well, listen, thank you all for checking us out. Gerald, thank you for your time. On behalf of Gerald, I am Baxter E. Hall. And again, we Black history is American history. And I'm hoping that you guys are all doing you're celebrating in the way that you see fit. So until next time, peace.
Thanks, Baxter. Take care.
Welcome into his brain, welcome into his frequency. Enter at your own risk, come be at peace with me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, please subscribe, share, and also hit that notification button as well. Thank you so much.
Financial literacy to authentic Black history, this real rap.